Princess Valexa stared out the viewport of her royal escape pod as it plummeted through Earth's atmosphere. The blue and green planet grew larger by the second, her damaged vessel leaving a fiery trail across the sky. The pursuit had been relentless. Her father's enemies determined to capture her for political leverage. The Arcturian princess gripped the control panel as the pod shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the console, bathing her pale blue skin in crimson. Her six-fingered hands trembled as she tried to stabilize the descent. "Navigation systems failing," announced the ship's AI. "Emergency landing protocols engaged." Valexa closed her large violet eyes. "Just get me down in one piece." The pod broke through the cloud layer, revealing a vast expanse of green forest below. The mountains of this primitive world seemed to reach up to claim her as the vessel lost the last of its power. With a final warning screech, the pod crashed through the trees and slammed into the forest floor, the impact throwing Valexa against her restraints before everything went dark. Miles away, Forest Ranger Mike Chen looked up from his lunch at the sound of the distant crash. He squinted at the plume of smoke rising above the tree line. "That's not good," he muttered, grabbing his pack and radio. "Control, this is Chen. I've got visual on what looks like a small aircraft down in Sector 7. Moving to investigate now." "These," radio crackled. "Copy that, Chen. Backup is 2 hours out minimum. Assessment only, don't play hero." "Roger that," Mike replied, already jogging toward his ranger vehicle. The forest was dense, forcing Mike to continue on foot after driving as close as possible to the crash site. The smell of burnt metal and strange chemicals grew stronger as he approached. He expected to find a small plane or perhaps an experimental drone. What he found instead stopped him in his tracks. Half buried in the soft earth was a sleek metallic pod unlike anything he'd ever seen. No wings, no propellers, no obvious means of flight. Its surface gleamed with an iridescent material that seemed to shift colors in the dappled forest light. "What the hell?" Mike whispered, approaching cautiously. A portion of the craft had split, open, revealing a dark interior. Mike pulled out his flashlight and peered inside. His heart nearly stopped when the beam illuminated a figure slumped in what appeared to be a pilot's chair. But this was no human pilot. The being was humanoid but clearly alien, slender with blue-tinged skin, six-fingered hands, and facial features that were just different enough to be unsettling. A line of small ridges ran from the forehead down to a neck that seemed too long. The creature wore what looked like a form-fitting uniform, adorned with unfamiliar symbols. Mike's training took over despite his shock. He checked for signs of life, finding a pulse point on the alien's neck. The rhythm was fast but steady. "Hey," he said softly. "Can you hear me?" The alien's eyes fluttered open, revealing striking violet irises with no whites. Those eyes widened in alarm as they focused on Mike. The creature gasped and scrambled backward in the seat, speaking rapidly in a language of clicks and musical tones. Mike held up his hands. "Easy there. I'm not going to hurt you." The alien stopped, tilting its head in confusion. A small device on its collar blinked several times. When it spoke again, the words were halting but understandable. "Human, primitive world, not authorized contact." "Well, excuse me," Mike said, unable to keep the sarcasm from his voice despite the extraordinary situation. "Your unauthorized crash landing isn't exactly following protocol either." The alien's expression shifted to what Mike guessed was indignation. "I am Princess Valexa of the Royal House of Arcturus. My presence here is unintentional." Mike stared. "A princess? Like an actual alien princess?" "Your comprehension is adequate," Valexa replied, then winced as she tried to move. "My vessel is damaged beyond repair. I require assistance." Mike shook his head in disbelief. "This is way above my pay grade." He glanced at his radio but hesitated. If he reported finding an alien, government agencies would swarm the place in hours. Something told him that might not end well for the injured visitor. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but you're hurt. My cabin is about 2 miles from here. I can treat those injuries, then we can figure out next steps." Valexa's eyes narrowed. You offer aid without contacting your authorities? Let's just say I've seen enough movies to know how this usually goes, Mike replied. Can you walk? The princess attempted to stand but stumbled. Mike caught her instinctively, surprised by how light she was despite being nearly his height. I will manage, she said, pulling away from his touch with obvious discomfort. They had just exited the pod when a distant roar echoed through the sky. Valexa froze, fear evident on her alien features. Draconian scouts, she whispered. They followed my descent path. We must hide. Mike looked up but saw nothing yet. Friends of yours? If they capture me, your world will become a diplomatic battleground, Valexa said urgently. We must go, now. Mike didn't need more convincing. He led the princess away from the crash site, heading deeper into the forest rather than toward the trail. The alien struggled to navigate the uneven terrain, her movements suggesting she was used to smoother environments. What exactly are you running from? Mike asked as they pushed through dense underbrush. Valexa's translator device hummed before she answered. Political marriage. Prince Zorgax of the Draconian hegemony. The Union would give them access to Arcturian technology that could shift the balance of power in their favor. So you're a runaway bride, Mike summarized. Across galaxies, that's ambitious. I did not anticipate landing here, Valexa said with what sounded like embarrassment. Earth is classified as a pre-contact civilization, a primitive world, not ready for galactic community. Mike helped her over a fallen log. Primitive, huh? Yet here you are, needing our primitive help. The sound of engines grew louder. Through the canopy, Mike caught glimpses of sleek, dark shapes moving with impossible speed. He pulled Valexa under a rocky overhang, just as a searchlight swept the forest floor, where they had been standing moments before. They are scanning for Arcturian biosignatures, Valexa whispered. My royal genetic marker is distinctive. Mike removed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Will this help? Valexa looked surprised. The natural fibers may confuse their sensors temporarily. That was unexpectedly insightful for a primitive species. You know, you might want to ease up on the primitive talk, Mike said, especially when this primitive is trying to save your royal blue behind. For the first time, Valexa's expression softened into what might have been a smile. Your point is acknowledged, Mike Chen of Earth. They waited in tense silence as the scout ships circled overhead. Eventually the vessels moved away, continuing their search pattern over the next valley. We should move while we can, Mike said. My cabin has supplies and we can treat your injuries there. As they resumed their careful trek through the forest, Valexa studied the human with new interest. Perhaps there was more to this world than the Arcturian educational archives had indicated. The human showed resourcefulness, courage, and compassion, traits that her people often dismissed as irrelevant compared to technological advancement. The galaxy's powers would be searching for her now. Her father, Emperor Tholian, would be frantic, with worry once he learned of her disappearance. But for now, stranded on this so-called primitive world, Princess Valexa found herself dependent on the kindness of a species she had been taught to regard as barely evolved. Your world, she said quietly as they walked. It is quite beautiful. Mike glanced back at her with a genuine smile. Welcome to Earth, Your Highness. It might not be what you expected, but we've got our moments. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Mike's cabin as Princess Valexa sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by parts of her damaged communication device. Her blue fingers worked with precision, connecting delicate wires and adjusting tiny components. 3 days had passed since the crash, and she had quickly learned Earth's main languages through her neural translator. Mike entered, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. Any luck with that thing? Valexa shook her head. The quantum relay is damaged. I can send only short-range signals. She accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. At first, she had refused human food, surviving on emergency rations from her escape pod. But curiosity had eventually won out. This beverage continues to be acceptable, she said after a careful sip. Mike smiled at what he now recognized as high praise from the alien princess. Glad to hear it. So what happens when you fix that thing? Your people just swoop down and pick you up? If I can contact my father's fleet, yes, the Emperor will send retrieval ships. A shadow crossed her face. But the Draconians may intercept the signal. As if on cue, the cabin's windows rattled with the sound of sonic booms. Mike rushed to look outside. 3 black ships just entered the atmosphere, he reported. They looked nothing like regular aircraft. Valexa paled, her blue skin turning almost white. Draconian scout vessels. They are expanding their search grid. She quickly gathered her device. We must leave immediately. Where to? Mike asked, already grabbing his emergency pack. Those ships can cover more ground in minutes than we could in days. Valexa's violet eyes narrowed in thought. Your planet's magnetic poles, the natural electromagnetic fluctuations will interfere with their tracking systems. That's at least 1,000 miles north, Mike said. We'd need to fly, and that would make us easy to spot. Then we travel on land, Valexa declared, using your knowledge of this territory. Within 20 minutes, they were in Mike's old truck, heading down Forest Service roads that rarely saw traffic. Valexa hunched in the passenger seat, her alien features hidden under a hat and scarf despite the warm weather. Your vehicle is primitive, she observed, studying the manual controls. But reliable, Mike countered, and invisible to your high-tech friends. No computer systems to track. Valexa considered this. An advantage I had not anticipated. Perhaps there is wisdom in maintaining older technologies. As they drove, Mike's curiosity got the better of him. So what's it like out there? In space, I mean. Are there many worlds like yours? The Galactic Confederation includes over 300 sentient species across 12,000 inhabited worlds, Valexa replied. My people, the Arcturians, are among the founding members. We specialize in biotechnology and quantum computing. And these Draconians, what's their deal? Valexa's expression darkened. The Draconian hegemony is an expansionist empire. They value strength and conquest. For centuries, they have sought our biotech knowledge to enhance their military capabilities. And marrying you would give them access? Precisely. The marriage contract included technology exchange clauses that my father couldn't refuse without causing diplomatic incident. She looked out the window at the passing forest. I was to be the price of continued peace. Mike frowned. That's messed up, even by Earth standards. They fell silent as the truck wound through mountain passes. By midday, they had put considerable distance between themselves and the crash site, but Valexa remained tense, constantly scanning the sky. There, she suddenly cried out, pointing at distant black shapes moving across the horizon. Mike immediately pulled off the main road onto a logging trail, driving deep into the woods until the truck was hidden under a canopy of trees. They waited, barely breathing as the distant hum of advanced engines passed overhead. They're searching in a standard grid pattern, Valexa whispered. If we can predict their movements, we can avoid detection. Like a game of chess, Mike mused, thinking several moves ahead. Valexa looked at him with surprise. You have chess on Earth, a game of strategic prediction? We're not as primitive as you thought, huh? Mike grinned. After the ships passed, they continued north, sticking to back roads and stopping only when necessary. At a small gas station, Mike went inside to pay while Valexa waited in the truck. Through the window, she watched him interact with the cashier, laughing, exchanging pleasantries, completely at ease despite the alien hunters in the sky. It was puzzling. In Arcturian society, such casual interaction between social classes would be unthinkable. Yet these humans seemed to find strength in their connections. When Mike returned, he brought food and a local map. We need to change course, he said, spreading the map on the dashboard. There's a military base up ahead. Last thing we need is for your Draconian friends to get spotted by our Air Force. Your military would be no match for Draconian technology, Valexa said. Maybe not, but they'd try, and that would just make things worse for everyone. Mike traced an alternate route on the map. This will add a day to our journey, but it's safer. Valexa studied his face. You show concern for your people's safety despite having no obligation to them. Why? Mike looked surprised by the question. Because that's what you do. You look out for others when you can. Even at personal cost? Sometimes that's when it matters most. That night they camped in a remote clearing. While Mike built a small fire, Valexa worked on her communication device, occasionally glancing at the human with newfound curiosity. In my education, she said finally, Earth was described as a world of primitive beings focused only on basic survival and tribal conflicts. Mike laughed. Well, we have plenty of those too. We're not perfect by any stretch. Yet you risked your safety to help me, a stranger not even of your species. She connected two components and her device emitted a soft blue glow. Such behavior contradicts our understanding of evolutionary development. Maybe your science missed something about evolution, Mike suggested, handing her a plate of warmed beans. Cooperation can be just as important as competition. Before Valexa could respond, her device began pulsing rapidly. Her eyes widened. I've established connection with an Arcturian relay beacon. It must be at the edge of your solar system. She quickly began entering coordinates and codes. So your people are coming? Mike asked, feeling strangely disappointed at the thought. Yes, but... Valexa stopped mid-sentence, her head tilting as if listening. In one swift motion, she shut off her device and grabbed Mike's arm. Draconian communication signatures. They've detected the transmission. The distant sound of engines confirmed her fears. Mike immediately kicked dirt over the fire and gathered their supplies. There's a cave system nearby, he said. The rock should block their scanners. They ran through the dark forest, guided only by Mike's flashlight. Behind them, searchlights began sweeping the trees. They reached the cave entrance just as the lights drew closer, ducking inside the narrow opening. The cave was cold and damp, extending deep into the mountain. Mike led the way through the main passage, moving with confidence born from years of wilderness training. How did you know this was here? Valexa whispered. I've hiked this area for years, Mike replied. Part of being primitive is knowing your surroundings. They settled in a dry chamber far from the entrance. Outside, they could hear the faint hum of the draconian ships hovering over the forest. Did your message get through? Mike asked. Valexa nodded. My father will know I'm alive, but not my exact location. And now the draconians know too. She looked at Mike with genuine concern. I've brought danger to your world, Mike Chen. I am sorry. Hey, it's not every day I get to help an alien princess outrun space villains, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But we need a new plan. We can't keep running forever. Valexa studied her device thoughtfully. Perhaps we don't need to reach the magnetic pole after all. If I could amplify my signal from a high elevation point with minimal electronic interference. There's an old observatory on Mount Watson about 50 miles from here, Mike suggested. Isolated, high up, and with equipment you might be able to use. Then that is our destination, Valexa decided. In the dim light of their small lamp, she reached out and briefly touched Mike's hand, the first voluntary contact she had initiated. Your knowledge continues to surprise me, human. Perhaps our alliance is not so unlikely after all. The Imperial flagship Eternal Radiance hung in orbit above Jupiter, its crystalline hull reflecting the gas giant's swirling storms. Within the command chamber, Emperor Tholian of Arcturus paced before a holographic display of the Sol system, his long blue fingers clasped behind his back. Court advisors stood at a respectful distance, their expressions solemn. My daughter's signal was traced to the third planet, the Emperor said, his voice tight with concern, a pre-contact world called Earth. First Advisor Lyra stepped forward with a slight bow. Sire, the signal was brief but confirmed Princess Valexa's royal genetic signature. She lives. Among primitives, Tholian muttered. And with draconians, hunting her. He turned to his military commander. How soon can the rescue fleet arrive? 3 Earth days, Your Majesty. The wormhole aperture requires precise calibration for ships of our size. The Emperor nodded. Prepare my personal shuttle. I will go ahead with an advance team. Sire, Lyra protested, protocol forbids your presence on a pre-contact world. Tholian's eyes flashed. My daughter's safety supersedes protocol. On the bridge of the Draconian warship Conqueror's Fist, Prince Zorgax studied the scans of Earth with growing frustration. His scaled skin shimmered darkly in the red lighting of the command deck. The princess was here, he growled, pointing to a forested region. But the trail has gone cold. The ship's tracker, a slender being with enhanced sensory organs, bowed, apologetically. Forgive me, Your Highness, the human's primitive vehicle leaves no electronic signature to follow. A human. Zorgax spat the word. She runs with a primitive animal rather than accepting her destiny as my bride. He turned to his commander. Deploy all scouts. I want the princess found before her father arrives. What of the human? The commander asked. Zorgax's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. Kill it. Slowly. Miles below on Earth's surface, Mike's truck rattled along a narrow mountain road. Rain pounded against the windshield as wipers struggled to maintain visibility. In the passenger seat, Valexa studied a paper map with intense concentration. The observatory should be 17 kilometers ahead at the summit, she said, pointing to their destination. Mike nodded, squinting through the downpour. Weather's giving us good cover, at least. Those ships would have trouble spotting us in this storm. Draconian scanners can penetrate weather patterns, Valexa corrected him. But they would need to know where to look. The planet's size works in our favor. They had been traveling for 2 days since the cave, taking detours and back roads to avoid detection. During that time, something had changed between them. The princess no longer looked at Earth objects with disdain, instead asking thoughtful questions about human culture and history. Your species has accomplished much without quantum technology, she admitted as they drove. Your adaptability is remarkable, Mike smiled. High praise from an alien princess. I am serious, Mike. Chen. My people achieved space travel 3,000 years ago, but we did so through gradual, methodical advancement. Humans have compressed similar progress into mere centuries. We're impatient, Mike said with a shrug. Not always a good thing. A sudden explosion of light ahead made them both flinch. A draconian scout ship descended through the clouds, its search beam cutting through the rain directly in their path. They've found us, Valexa gasped. Mike spun the wheel, sending the truck skidding off the main road onto a logging trail. Hold on! The truck bounced violently as it raced down the rough path, branches scraping against the sides. Behind them, the scout ship fired a pulse that scorched the earth where they had been moments before. Can this vehicle go faster? Valexa asked, bracing herself against the dashboard. Not without flipping us over, Mike replied, fighting for control on the muddy track. We need cover. Ahead, the trail disappeared into a dense stand of ancient redwoods. Mike gunned the engine, plunging them into the shadow of the massive trees. The forest canopy closed over them like a protective hand, the thick trunks creating a natural maze. The scout ship hovered above the forest, unable to penetrate the dense foliage with its sensors. After several tense minutes, it moved away, continuing its search pattern elsewhere. Mike let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. That was close. Valexa nodded, her expression troubled. They are concentrating their search in this region. Someone must have reported seeing us. Or they figured out where we're headed, Mike suggested. Either way, we can't use the truck anymore. It's too easy to spot. They abandoned the vehicle deep in the forest and continued on foot, following animal trails through the underbrush. The rain eventually stopped, giving way to a misty afternoon. Despite the danger, Valexa seemed fascinated by the forest, pausing occasionally to examine plants or insects. Life here is so diverse, she remarked, watching a spider rebuild its rain-damaged web. On Arcturus, our ecosystems were carefully engineered for efficiency centuries ago. Engineered? Mike asked. You mean you designed your own plants and animals? Of course. Allowing natural evolution is... She searched for the word. Messy. Mike laughed. Sometimes messy is good, creates unexpected solutions. As the day faded into evening, they reached a ridge overlooking a valley. In the distance, the white dome of the observatory gleamed in the last rays of sunlight, but between them and their destination lay an open meadow with no cover. We'll have to wait for darkness, Mike decided. Too exposed otherwise. They made camp in a small hollow, eating the last of their provisions. As night fell, stars appeared in the clear sky, countless points of light that Valexa studied with a homesick expression. "My home is there," she said softly, pointing to a bright star near the horizon. "Arcturus. My father is likely already on his way." "Will you be glad to go back?" Mike asked. Valexa was silent for a long moment. "A week ago I would have answered without hesitation. Now, I am not certain. This journey has shown me much I did not expect." "Like what?" "Like how a species without neural translators manages to communicate complex ideas. How you survive without molecular synthesizers or atmospheric regulators." She turned to face him. "How a forest ranger risks his life for someone not of his world." Mike felt his face warm. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Valexa said firmly. "They would not. That is precisely what makes humans different." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant rumble. Looking up, they saw multiple ships cutting through the night sky, searchlights sweeping the terrain below. "They're forming a perimeter around the observatory," Mike realized. "They've guessed our plan." Valexa's face set in determination. "Then, we must move now, while they are still deploying." They crossed the meadow at a run, staying low in the tall grass. The observatory loomed larger as they approached, its white dome stark against the night sky. They had nearly reached the tree, line on the other side, when a spotlight caught them. "There!" a harsh voice commanded over an amplified speaker. "Take them." A scout ship descended rapidly, hovering just above the ground. Armed draconian soldiers leapt out, their scaled forms moving with predatory grace. "Run!" Mike pushed Valexa toward the trees. "I'll hold them off." "No," Valexa protested, but Mike was already moving toward the soldiers, drawing their attention. He picked up a fallen branch, wielding it like a staff, as the first draconian approached. The soldiers' laughter died when Mike's improvised weapon connected with his head with surprising force. "The human fights," another soldier said with grudging respect. "Primitive, but brave." 3 more soldiers surrounded Mike, their weapons raised. From the safety of the trees, Valexa watched in horror as they closed in. She had almost decided to surrender herself when a new light appeared in the sky. A sleek silver vessel bearing the royal insignia of Arcturus. "Father," she whispered. The Arcturian ship fired precision beams that forced the Draconians back. A transport beam activated, and in a flash of blue light, both Mike and Valexa were pulled aboard the rescue vessel. They materialized in a gleaming chamber where armored Arcturian guards immediately surrounded them. An officer stepped forward, bowing deeply to the princess. "Your Highness, by the Emperor's command, we have come to bring you home." Valexa straightened, suddenly every inch the royal she was. "This human is under my protection. He will be treated with full diplomatic courtesy." The officer looked uncertainly at Mike, who stood awkwardly in his muddy clothes among the immaculate Arcturians. "As you command, Princess," the officer said finally. "The Emperor awaits you in the command chamber." As they were led through corridors of impossible beauty and technology, Mike leaned close to Valexa. "So," he whispered, "I finally get to meet your dad." Despite everything, Valexa smiled. "Indeed, and I believe, Mike Chen of Earth, that he is in for quite a shock." Mike studied the elegant chamber where he and Valexa waited. The walls shimmered with a pearly light that seemed to come from nowhere. The furniture, if that's what the floating curved surfaces were, adjusted itself automatically to support his body when he leaned against it. "Your father's taking his time," Mike said, trying to hide his nervousness. Valexa glanced at the entrance. The Emperor must maintain certain formalities even in urgent situations. She hesitated, then added, "He may not be pleased that I brought you aboard." "Yeah, I got that impression from your guards. They keep looking at me like I'm a stray dog you dragged in." Before Valexa could respond, the chamber doors slid open silently. 4 armored Arcturians entered first, followed by a tall, regal figure, with deep blue skin and elaborate robes that seemed to float around him. Emperor Tholian's face was an older, more severe version of his daughter's, with prominent ridgelines tracing his high forehead. Mike instinctively straightened his posture as the Emperor's gaze fell upon him. "Father," Valexa said, bowing slightly. "May I present Mike Chen of Earth? He saved my life and has been my protector and guide." The Emperor studied Mike with piercing violet eyes. "So this is the primitive who assisted you?" His translator gave his voice a musical quality despite the coldness of his words. "We are grateful, human, though your involvement has complicated matters considerably." Mike nodded awkwardly. "Happy to help. Your daughter's pretty tough, you know. Quick learner, too." A small flicker of surprise crossed the Emperor's face at Mike's casual tone. He turned to Valexa. "The Draconian fleet has entered this system. Prince Zorgax demands your return and threatens sanctions against our people if we refuse." "I will not marry him," Valexa stated firmly. "The Alliance would give the hegemony access to our biotech. They seek weapons, father." "It is not so simple," the Emperor began, but was interrupted by an alarm blaring throughout the ship. An officer rushed in. "Your Majesty, Draconian warships have locked weapons on us. They demand the princess and the human be surrendered immediately." On the main view screen, a fearsome vessel appeared, 3 times the size of the Arcturian ship. Its black hull bristled with weapon ports. A communication channel opened, revealing Prince Zorgax's scaled face. "Emperor Tholian," the prince said with a cold smile. "Return my betrothed and surrender the primitive who aided her escape. Do this and your vessel may leave Earth orbit intact." The Emperor's expression remained impassive. "The princess is under my protection, as is her human companion. Your threats violate diplomatic protocols." Zorgax laughed. "Protocols? Your daughter violated our marriage contract, a contract that keeps peace between our empires." His yellow eyes narrowed. "You have 1 Earth hour to comply, or we open fire." The channel closed. Emperor Tholian turned to his officers. "Prepare defensive systems. Alert the fleet to accelerate their arrival." "The fleet is still 2 days away, sire," an officer replied. "We cannot withstand a full Draconian assault for that long." Mike cleared his throat. "Maybe you don't have to." All Arcturian eyes turned to him in surprise. "The human has a suggestion?" the Emperor asked, his tone somewhere between incredulous and curious. Mike stepped forward. "The Draconians want Valexa, but they also want me, specifically to make an example of me. We can use that." Valexa moved to his side. "What are you thinking?" "A distraction," Mike replied. "If I take a shuttle back to Earth's surface, they'll follow me. Their pride won't let them ignore a primitive who defied them." "Absurd," one of the officers said. "You would be captured immediately." "Not if I go somewhere I know and they don't," Mike countered. "The observatory has underground levels the Draconians haven't scanned. Old Cold War bunkers. I can lead them on a chase while you get the princess to safety." The Emperor studied Mike with new interest. "You would sacrifice yourself?" "I'm not planning on getting caught," Mike said with more confidence than he felt. "But even if I am, it's just me. Better than starting an interstellar war over my planet." After a moment of consideration, the Emperor nodded slowly. "The plan has merit, but I will not send you alone." He turned to his guard captain. "Prepare a stealth shuttle and a small strike team." "No," Mike said firmly. "Your people don't know Earth, terrain. They'll stand out. I need to move fast and blend in." "He's right, father," Valexa added. "Arcturian soldiers would be detected immediately." "Then who will ensure your safety, human?" the Emperor demanded. Mike smiled. "That's where your daughter comes in." An hour later, a small Arcturian shuttle dropped silently through Earth's atmosphere, its cloaking technology hiding it from both human and Draconian sensors. Inside, Mike checked the primitive but effective tools he had requested: rope, flashlights, flares, and several devices Valexa had modified with Arcturian technology. "The electromagnetic pulse generator is ready," Valexa said, handing him what looked like an ordinary flashlight. "It will disable their scanning equipment temporarily," Mike nodded, "and they'll have to follow us on foot, just what we want." "Us?" Valexa raised an eyebrow ridge. "My father believes I am remaining on his ship, and mine thinks I'm going alone," Mike replied with a grin. Funny how that worked out. The shuttle landed in a clearing near the observatory. As soon as they disembarked, it rose again, returning to the Emperor's ship as planned. Mike led the way through the trees until the observatory came into view. Draconian soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their scaled forms moving with predatory grace. "The entrance to the bunker is inside," Mike whispered. "We need a diversion." Valexa held up a small silver sphere. "This should suffice." She activated the device and threw it high over the observatory. It exploded in a brilliant flash of light and sound, drawing the attention of all the Draconian guards. As they rushed to investigate, Mike and Valexa sprinted to a side entrance. The door was locked, but Valexa placed her six-fingered hand over the electronic keypad. Her touch seemed to communicate with the primitive Earth technology, and the door clicked open. "How did you do that?" Mike asked as they slipped inside. "Your electronic systems are quaint," Valexa replied. "Simple to interface with." They made their way through darkened corridors until they reached an old elevator shaft. The elevator itself was long defunct, but a maintenance ladder ran down the side. "The bunker is 5 levels down," Mike explained. "Built during your Cold War as a fallback communication center." They descended quickly, the air growing cooler and damper with each level. Above them, they could hear the Draconians entering the building, their harsh voices echoing down the shaft. The bunker level was a large circular room filled with obsolete Earth computers and communication equipment. Thick concrete walls separated it from the upper levels, with only the elevator shaft and an emergency stairwell providing access. "Perfect," Mike said, surveying the space. "Now we set our trap." Working quickly, they prepared the room. Valexa repurposed parts from the old equipment while Mike set up physical barriers and escape routes. When they heard the Draconians beginning to descend the stairs, they took their positions. The first Draconian soldier entered cautiously, weapon raised. 5 more followed, spreading out to search the dimly lit bunker. Prince Zorgax himself came last, his ornate armor gleaming dully in the emergency lighting. "I know you are here, Princess," Zorgax called out. "And your primitive pet as well. Show yourselves and I may be merciful." "Funny thing about us primitives," Mike's voice echoed from hidden speakers around the room, making it impossible to locate its source. "We're pretty good at hiding," Zorgax snarled. "Find them." The soldiers moved deeper into the bunker, unaware. They were following a predetermined path. When the last one passed a certain point, Mike activated Valexa's modified pulse generator. A wave of energy swept through the room. The Draconians' advanced weapons and communication devices sparked and went dead. In the same moment, the heavy blast doors of the bunker slammed shut, sealing everyone inside. Zorgax roared in fury. "What is this primitive trickery?" Mike stepped out from behind a console, facing the prince calmly. "Just evening the odds a bit. You dare challenge me?" Zorgax advanced on Mike, towering over the human. "Without your Arcturian protectors, you are nothing." "Maybe," Mike conceded. "But I'm on my turf now." From shadows around the room, flares suddenly ignited, filling the space with blinding light and thick smoke. The Draconians, with their sensitive eyes, recoiled in pain. Mike used the confusion to slip away, leading the enraged soldiers on a chase through the maze-like arrangement of old equipment he had created. Meanwhile, Valexa worked at a console she had repaired, sending a precisely coded message to her father's ship. When the signal was complete, she moved to the emergency exit Mike had shown her. 20 minutes later, the Draconians had cornered Mike against the bunker wall. His diversions exhausted, he stood facing Prince Zorgax and his soldiers, with nothing but a metal pipe in his hands. Impressive for a primitive, Zorgax admitted, but ultimately futile. Maybe, Mike said again, glancing at his watch, but I only needed 20 minutes. The bunker suddenly shook as Arcturian cutting beams sliced through the ceiling. Blinding, light filled the room as Emperor Tholian himself descended on a gravity platform, surrounded by elite guards. Prince Zorgax, the Emperor said coldly, you stand in violation of multiple Confederation treaties. Your ships are now surrounded by the Arcturian fleet, which arrived through our emergency wormhole generator, thanks to precise coordinates provided by my daughter and her human ally. Zorgax looked from the Emperor to Mike in disbelief. A trap? Sprung by a primitive? Mike shrugged. Sometimes primitive works pretty well. The Grand Council chamber aboard the Arcturian flagship Eternal Radiance hummed with tension. Representatives from 12 advanced civilizations sat in tiered seating arranged in a perfect circle. At the center stood Emperor Tholian, Princess Valexa, and to the astonishment of many present, Mike Chen, still wearing his Earth clothes, now clean but distinctly out of place among the elaborate attire of galactic nobility. Prince Zorgax stood, opposite them, his scaled features rigid with controlled fury. Behind him, draconian military officers glared at the human with undisguised hatred. This emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council will now begin, announced a crystalline being who served as neutral mediator. We address the diplomatic incident between the Arcturian Empire and the Draconian hegemony regarding Princess Valexa's broken betrothal and the involvement of a pre-contact species. Emperor Tholian stepped forward. Esteemed colleagues, what began as a family matter has revealed a truth we can no longer ignore. The planet Earth, though technologically primitive by our standards, harbors a species of remarkable capability. Murmurs rippled through the assembled dignitaries. Mike shifted uncomfortably as dozens of alien eyes examined him with scientific curiosity. A single human, Tholian continued, with no advanced technology, managed to evade draconian forces, protect my daughter, and ultimately play a crucial role in resolving this conflict. Prince Zorgax snorted. The primitive had luck, nothing more. His involvement was a violation of our most sacred covenant, the protection of pre-contact worlds from interference. A covenant you violated first, Valexa countered, her voice clear and steady, when you pursued me to Earth's surface. A pursuit necessitated by your unlawful flight from our arrangement, Zorgax retorted. An arrangement your father agreed to. Under duress, the Emperor added, with implied threats against Arcturian colonies. The mediator raised a limb for silence. These accusations are serious. Prince Zorgax, do you deny bringing armed forces to a protected world? The draconian prince's eyes narrowed. We acted to retrieve the princess and protect the primitive world from unintended exposure to advanced technology. By firing energy weapons and deploying troops? Valexa asked incredulously. Mike cleared his throat. The sound drew everyone's attention. The human wishes to speak, the mediator announced, surprise evident in its harmonic tones. This is unprecedented, but given the unusual circumstances, the chair recognizes Earth Representative Mike Chen. Mike took a deep breath. I'm no diplomat and I don't pretend to understand all your politics, but I do know this. Your assessment of Earth as primitive is both right and wrong. He stepped forward, gaining confidence. Yes, we lack faster-than-light, travel and quantum technology. But humanity has qualities that seem rare even among advanced civilizations. Such as, asked a representative from a silicon-based culture, adaptability, creativity, the ability to make do with limited resources. Mike looked around the chamber. While trying to capture the princess, draconian forces with advanced sensors and weapons were repeatedly outmaneuvered by one human with basic tools and knowledge of the local terrain. A fluke, Zorgax dismissed. Then explain how a primitive managed this, Mike challenged. He turned to Valexa, who nodded and activated a holographic display. The display showed recordings from the bunker confrontation. The council watched in silence as Mike used simple Earth materials to confuse draconian sensors, redirect their forces, and ultimately trap them in the bunker. This human, Valexa explained, created an electromagnetic pulse generator from Earth parts combined with minimal Arcturian components. The design was novel, something neither our engineers nor the draconians had considered. A scientist from a gaseous species floated closer. "How did you conceive this device, human?" Mike shrugged. "Necessity. When you don't have advanced technology, you learn to improvise." The Emperor nodded approvingly. "This is precisely my point. Earth represents an untapped resource of innovative thinking. Their very limitations have fostered unique problem-solving approaches. You cannot seriously suggest granting them Confederation status," Zorgax objected. "They still wage wars among themselves. They pollute their planet. They are centuries from achieving the unity required for membership." "Not membership," the Emperor clarified, "but recognition and protection. And perhaps carefully managed cultural exchange." The council erupted in debate. Some representatives argued passionately against any contact with Earth, while others expressed fascination with Mike's demonstrated ingenuity. Prince Zorgax slammed his fist on the central podium. "Enough. The human's presence here is already a violation. I demand he be memory wiped and returned to Earth immediately, and the princess delivered to fulfill our contract." "The contract is void," Valexa said firmly. "I invoke the ancient right of proven judgment." A hushed silence fell over the council. "The right has not been claimed in 7 centuries, the mediator noted. The Emperor looked at his daughter with surprise. "Valexa, are you certain?" "I am." She stepped forward. "The law states that a royal heir may challenge an arranged marriage if they can demonstrate superior judgment through action. My escape and survival with the help of Mike Chen proves my judgment is sound." Zorgax laughed bitterly. "You claim that running away with a primitive demonstrates good judgment?" "I do." Valexa's voice never wavered. "The human you dismiss as primitive defeated your elite forces using ingenuity you could not counter. I recognized his value when you did not. That is the essence of good judgment." The mediator consulted ancient texts that appeared in the air before it. "The princess is correct. The right of proven judgment is valid under these circumstances." Emperor Tholian's face showed a mixture of pride and concern. "The right requires a formal judgment from the council. If granted, the marriage contract is nullified. If denied, Valexa finished, I must honor the original agreement." You looked at her in alarm. "You didn't mention this part." "It was my risk to take," she whispered back. The council members conferred among themselves. The debate grew heated, with various factions arguing for different interpretations of ancient law. Finally, the mediator called for order. "The council will now vote on Princess Valexa's claim to the right of proven judgment." One by one, the binge representatives indicated their decisions. The vote was close, with several abstentions. When the final tally was complete, the mediator announced, "By a narrow margin, the council recognizes the princess's claim. The marriage contract with Prince Zorgax is dissolved." The draconian delegation erupted in protest, but Zorgax himself remained eerily calm. "Very well. The law is the law." He turned to Mike. "You have made an enemy today, human. Remember that when your people finally reach the stars." After the draconians departed, the council addressed the question of Earth. "What shall be done with the human?" asked a representative. "He now possesses knowledge his species should not have." Emperor Tholian considered Mike thoughtfully. "I propose a solution. Earth will be granted protected status, with accelerated consideration for future contact. And Mike Chen will serve as an unofficial liaison, the first human to know of our existence." "You want me to be what? An alien ambassador?" Mike asked incredulously. "Of a sort," the Emperor confirmed. "You would return to Earth with knowledge but no proof. You would help us understand your species better while preparing the ground for eventual open contact." Valexa stepped closer to her father. I request permission to establish the first cultural exchange mission to Earth, with Mike Chen as our guide. The Emperor looked between his daughter and the human, a knowing gleam in his eye. Is that your wish? Or something more? Valexa's blue skin darkened slightly. Earth deserves to be understood properly. I have seen its value firsthand. After further discussion, the Council granted provisional approval for a limited exchange program. Mike would return to Earth with Valexa and a small team of Arcturian researchers operating in secret while studying human culture more thoroughly. As the Council session concluded, Mike and Valexa stood at a viewport, gazing down at the blue planet below. Your world looks beautiful from here, Valexa said softly. It has its problems, Mike admitted. But it's home. And now, in a way, it will be mine too. She turned to face him. Did you ever imagine your life would change like this when you found my crashed pod? Mike laughed. Not in a million years. Forest rangers don't typically end up in space negotiating with alien emperors. Perhaps that is why you succeeded, Valexa suggested. You saw possibilities where others saw only limitations. The Emperor approached them. His formal demeanor softened. The arrangements are complete. You will return to Earth tomorrow. Thank you, Your Majesty, Mike said, attempting a bow that made the Emperor smile. No, Mike Chen of Earth. It is I who must thank you. You have protected my daughter, challenged our preconceptions, and perhaps changed the course of galactic history. He gestured to the planet below. Your species has much to offer the Confederation when the time is right. As the Emperor departed, Valexa took Mike's hand in her six-fingered grasp. Ready for the next adventure? Teaching an alien princess about Earth while keeping her existence secret will not be simple. Mike squeezed her hand gently. After everything we've been through? Piece of cake. Far below, Earth continued its silent rotation, unaware that its place in the galaxy had just fundamentally changed. All because a forest ranger had been kind to a stranded alien princess.